larger families, and wife is looking after children. Of course, you have to do something, but you can do that very well on the local level. We in Liechtenstein, we have basically all healthcare with private insurance. We support the premiums by the state for up to a certain level of insurance if somebody cannot pay for that. So, and that works very well. And we have, and we are also in the lucky position that we have quite a lot of competition with hospitals around Liechtenstein. On the Swiss side and the Austrian side, we even have a small hospital in Liechtenstein. But that works quite well, I have to say. And I see it also in Switzerland with insurance, private insurance. It works quite well. Of course, here you have a little bit of a different situation, which is not ideal, I have to say, because so many people fall out of it. But I think that's something you could do also on a lower level. You don't have to do it on a state health system like you have it in the UK, for instance.
Questions? Yes.
Thank you. I'm curious about your experience in dealing with natural resources and waste. And I'm thinking in part of the experience of Romanian aluminum factory. Is there a need for the state to kind of regulate these things if you have small companies making their own choices?
Here again, I'm very much in favor of private ownership. That the mineral rights should basically go with the owner of the land. I'm not so much in favor with the US system where you can separate it. I think that's not an ideal thing. But I think if you put it together with the land, then I think those companies who extract the minerals, they have to pay a certain price for the damage they are doing, for destroying their land and for recultivation. That works quite well. We have the own experience in Austria. We are large landowners in Austria. That works quite fine. We get something from the state or from the companies. Some of them are state companies in Austria, but then they're obliged to recultivate it, and for us it's quite good business, and they improve sometimes even the land afterwards when they have to recultivate it, so we get a better farmland than we had it before. So if that works out quite well. So I think the natural resources should stay with private ownership.
Another question? Yes, in the back.
I would be Swiss if my grandfather hadn't come here. I understand that the men were required to stand in the town square of each canton on Sunday morning and decide all the questions that the state was faced with. But I understand that probably around 74 that they went the other way and became a federal government. So, and the problem in this country is that the people who make these decisions have a great deal of secrecy. When Alexander Hamilton was Secretary of the Treasury and all of the states were floundering because they couldn't pay off their war debts from fighting the British, he said, we will have the federal government take over all state debt. The wealthy will buy the bonds. This will ensure the loyalty of the wealthy to the state. So his purpose was to be, quote, always in debt. So what happened to Switzerland that they gave up having people meet where everything was in the open? Secrecy is the main problem with government and with wealth.
Yes, I agree to a large extent. I think that there should be as little secrecy as really needed. Perhaps in some instances there are need of secrecy. I think if you're threatened, let's say in a war situation or some other things where there might be some. But basically I think I'm very much in favor of a very open society, and very open government. And I think that's also the way how you can mobilize the people and giving them a say. So I always, well, of course we are a small country, but I always try to explain to the people why we are doing that and so on, listening what they would have to say. And I think that also, Switzerland is basically quite open. As far as I know, they have very few state secrets, at least as far as I know it.
Yes, question here towards the front.
Are there any direct benefits that Liechtenstein derives from the association with the European Union?
Yes. That was one of the reasons why I thought that we should become member of the well, not of the European Union, that would be very, but of this European Economic Area, because it opened markets for us. And as a small country without natural resources, you're really dependent on your exports to pay for imports, to feed the people. And so that I think that's a big advantage. And what we have seen in Liechtenstein was that our economy took off after World War II when the US managed to convince the Western European states to open their economies. Before, it was very difficult to be successful. Our market was basically, well, first with the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, then that went down because we had a sort of free trade agreement with the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, which was a large market. Then we had one with Switzerland after World War I, but it was a restricted market. And when that opened up, what took off in Liechtenstein was really with us manufacturing. So we're still in Europe, perhaps even worldwide, I don't know, but the highest industrialized country in the world, with the most people working in manufacturing. And that has to be sort of high tech, the export all over the world. So that is I think very important to have these free markets basically all over the world, and that helped us tremendously.
May I follow up with a naive question?
Yeah?
Is the euro the medium of exchange, at least this time?
No. After World War I, we started to use the Swiss franc because the Krona-Währung of the Austrian-Hungarian just collapsed. We were neutral during World War I. As before that, we had abolished military for quite some time before that. And so since then we have the Swiss franc. And what I see for us, the Swiss franc is an advantage because in the Swiss franc, because it's a sort of harbor where people put their money into it, basically the interest rate is usually quite low. And so that also, of course, encouraged the financing or made it easier to finance our manufacturing and also service companies and so on. So that was good for business, and I don't see that we are going to to change over to the euro, at least not in the foreseeable future.
A question back here.
Your Highness, are German financial troops still sitting on the border threatening the invasion of Liechtenstein? Or have you finally been able to resolve that in such a way that the rights of privacy can still be maintained and you don't have to worry about having your citizens dragged off to Dusseldorf for interrogation?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we had to make some compromises. We have to, if they ask for German resident, if they have the indication that that somebody might have an account in Liechtenstein and has not declared the account, if they have some at least indication, then we have agreed to open up to lift the banking secrecy. Of course, we were not very happy because, especially during World War II, we had a lot of Jewish money in Liechtenstein too. And we had during the Cold War, we had also people who from the eastern countries who were in the communist regime who somehow put some money either to Switzerland or to Liechtenstein. We can only hope that Germany, and I'm quite hopeful, will remain a democratic state. But we always had, I think since the end of the Holy Roman Empire, about 200 years ago, we always had ups and downs with our relations with the different German Reichs. So we are still in war with the Second Reich, which went under at the end of World War II. We had been in war was back in the 19th century with them. Then we dissolved the army. But anyhow, so we always had such strained relationships there. Certain times, of course, with the Third Reich, they threatened to invade us. Luckily, they didn't. But so it was fine after World War II, and when the capital moved to Berlin slowly, then again we had more problems. Now I hope that we are going to. Well, we had to give in. If you're small states, you're somehow at the mercy. Even Switzerland had to give up basically banking secrecy for EU citizens.
Question up here.
Hi, I have two questions. The first is this local community idea is a great idea, but for me, one roadblock will be inefficient repeat of services between local communities. For instance, fire services. Why would each individual local community would need a service like fire service, which can be more efficiently directed by the state? That is my first question. And the second question is about the voucher system. Because when you institute a system like a voucher system, what inevitably happens is some sort of a religious school or something, which is more independent funding than other schools have the competitive advantage. And what is the state role in regulating certain schools from teaching pseudo-history or pseudo-science?
Mm-hmm. Okay, for fire brigades and these kind of things, we have seen it in Liechtenstein, we see it in Switzerland. Then communities come together and they do certain things together. We have even because Switzerland also has a tradition of a lot of autonomy for their communities. So we have even association of communities between Liechtenstein communities and Swiss communities on the other side of the border. For instance, for certain school things where we think it would have been too expensive, or now it has become a little bit easier with Austrian communities on the other side of the border. Austria still is quite much more centralized, and the communities have not so many rights. But what I see is really, if those communities have enough autonomy, they can work together. Sometimes with some communities where they have common interests and so on, and that works out very well, I have to say. And the second question was about the
school vouchers.
The school thing. Yes, I have nothing against religious schools or whatever, or private school, whatever it is. I think what you have, if you work with a voucher system, I think the state still has to have a control on the teaching to a certain degree. Of course, you cannot allow, for instance, that they teach lots of nonsense, because then you will